Hi, it's Ray from IELTS Focus, and I want to go through a couple of essays in this video. And this is from a student who was at a band 9 but kept getting stuck at band 6.5 in the writing. So he had a band 9 for speaking and listening and reading, but the writing was causing real trouble. Now the student only had a week to prepare, so it wasn't much time, and also he hadn't got any feedback before in his writing. So we're going to look at the first essay he sent and the last one, and I think he sent about 5 or 6 in total. Anyway, he eventually went on to get a band 7 in the writing section in IELTS. Okay, so let's take a look. Okay, so let's take a look at the first essay that this student sent me. So as I say, he was a band 9 in other areas, but was stuck at a band 6.5 in writing, and he didn't know what was going on. So I had a look at the first essay, and it's a problem solution essay. So obviously before we even write anything, we need to analyze the task question and study the keywords and decide what kind of essay it is. So the internet has transformed the way information is shared and consumed, but it's also created problems that didn't exist before. Now looking at the introduction, it's quite a long introduction. It's like 75 words. That's very long for an introduction. And here are his main body paragraphs. So you might want to pause the video, have a read of it, have a look for yourself. And there's main body 2, main body 1 and 2 there. And there's the conclusion. So the whole essay was around about 350 words or more. It's a very long essay. So if you want to just pause the video, have a read through it and see what you think, and see if you can see what the problem is. Okay, now we're going to look at what I've done to correct that. So first of all, his introduction, as I mentioned before, was very long, and not only that, there's an outline sentence here in the introduction. Now outline sentences, they look like they're memorized, and I don't advise putting those into an essay. Now it may not lose your band score, but it just doesn't look good for your vocabulary, and in fact the examiner may not even count those words. So it's better to actually write a thesis statement instead. So you can see that it's very long. I usually tell people to aim for under 55 words approximately. 50 words is fine, you know. There's no rule for what the word count should be on an introduction, but it needs to be quite concise and simple. So there's 2 parts to an introduction. You've got to paraphrase the task question and then a thesis statement. And I gave him a link here on outline sentences and to avoid those, and that's actually on my blog. Now this is my idea for the introduction. There's 2 ideas here. We've got the paraphrasing here, and this is where I outline the issue, the problem, and then the possible solution. And again, the same here, the problem and the solution in the thesis statement. That's the thesis statement there, and the thesis statement is here. So there's 2 versions of the introduction, and you can see it's very short and to the point and very concise. And you'll notice I'm going with only 1 problem and 1 solution in my example, my model answer. You can still get a band 7 with just 1 problem, 1 solution, as long as it's well explained and well developed. Looking at main body 1, okay, a few small things here like relative pronoun, a couple of cohesive devices I changed. You can see the grammar and the vocabulary are very good, but the problem in this main body paragraph is that it's not clearly supporting his main idea, and there's no real specific example. So there's something about that paragraph that doesn't really make it for a band 7. It's the coherence, so not so much the coherence, but coherence, cohesion, and task response. Looking at main body 2, we've got some wording here which is just not needed. So it's kind of going into a vagueness. And then this would mean that this is a supporting sentence, and I've got a cohesive device additionally. So he's using the word secondly. This is a little bit mechanical, so I just used additionally. And it can be reduced by the government educating the public. So being specific, and then spelling here, public classes, public information campaigns is better wording. And I added this cohesive device. Now the paragraph is about 90 something words, whereas the first main body paragraph is very long. So there's a little bit of an imbalance in the paragraphing there. And I had to add some cohesive devices into the body paragraphs. Now you don't need too many of those. If you have too many cohesive devices, it can lower your score. So even that is like more than enough. And the conclusion was not very clear. I couldn't work out what he meant here, and I didn't know what he meant by this either, and the examiner wouldn't know. And he mentioned something about both the government, cooperation of both the government and public. But that is like a new idea, because that isn't mentioned in the okay, I've actually added it in the body paragraph, but it wasn't kind of clearly mentioned, and it wasn't mentioned in the thesis statement or in his introduction about the government. So the conclusion needed to be reworked. What you needed to really do is just summarize his main points. And I think he had quite a lot of points that he was covering, like the lack of content censoring and online theft and filtering out inappropriate content, educating the public. There's kind of too much going on in the essay. And this was the way I've done the conclusion. This was the introduction, my example of an introduction. And this is my example of how I would write a conclusion. And one way to write a conclusion is to take your thesis statement and to rephrase it again, reparaphrase it, which is what I've done in my model answer conclusion. And I also gave him a lot more detail on a private YouTube video here. Now the essay was very long, 353 words. The problem with that is you can either go off topic and you'll end up including irrelevant information, which he kind of has done a little bit. He's included information which is not really necessary. He needs to make it more concise. Another thing is you can run out of time, and you're going to be making more grammar and vocabulary mistakes if you have a very long essay like that. So the body paragraphs need to be a bit more balanced, around about 100 words each approximately. And the conclusion is just 2 or 3 sentences. And I usually tell people to aim for around about 270 to 290 words. And I also gave him links here on how to add examples in body paragraphs, how to write a conclusion, and how to work on his thesis statement. So he got around about band 6.5 from that. And it was task response, coherence, cohesion, which was a little bit weak there. And then I gave a model answer for him to look at. So you can take a look at that model answer, pause the video if you like, and you'll see the way I've approached that. Okay, so that was his first essay. Now, after a few more corrections, I could see that we can now look at his his last essay. He sent a few more in between, and this was a discussion essay. So some people believe school children shouldn't be given homework by teachers, whereas others argue that homework plays an important role in the education of children. Discuss both these views, give your own opinion. So it's a discussion essay. So this was his introduction, and main body 1, main body 2. You can pause the video if you like to read this, and then the conclusion. Now let's take a look at his improvements here. So straight away the introduction is much better. He's basically just paraphrased the 2 sides. So some would argue and others believe there's just a spelling mistake here. And then he's got his thesis statement, which is very concise and clear to the reader. So it's a nice clear thesis statement, well paraphrased, but just a little bit of a spelling mistake. Overall, it's a pretty good introduction. Now on the main body paragraphs, okay, on the one hand, great, so we're looking at the first view. He's using the right language. Many people think, that's good. This is because, so now we're explaining. And I've only just added a couple of things, like the preposition was wrong here, but that's nothing too serious. And I've made it more specific, referencing for many pupils. And there wasn't much I could really do to correct that because it was quite good actually. And he's got a specific example now here. This is the example which backs up his main point. And here's his opinion. Looking at main body 2, again, very good. Now on the other hand, so we're looking at the other side. Other people are of the opinion, so we're discussing the other side, what other people think. And just a preposition here, a study from Dover College. And I just added this for referencing. Again, it's very clear, it's concise, easy to follow. He's got a specific example here, which basically supports his main idea. And here is his opinion. And the conclusion, again, so although, so in this case he needed to add a conjunction, so although opinions differ, that's much clearer. So he's kind of referencing the different opinions, and then he's giving his opinion, his own opinion again. He's rephrased it, and I just changed some wording here and there. And that was a band 7. So that's pretty good in the space of less than, well, about a week. It took for about 5 essay corrections. And there was my model answer. So it's also worth noting that after these corrections, he went on to do the exam, and he got a band 7 in the writing section. So he had a band 9, as I say, in speaking, reading, listening, and eventually he got the band 7. But he didn't have much time to prepare, and I usually advise my students to give themselves much more than a week if you want to get a band 7, especially if you're in a band 6 area. Okay, so if you have any questions or anything, leave a comment in the comment section below. Thanks a lot.